Welcome to the You Love to See It podcast, coverage of your Seattle Mariners. Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the You Love to See It podcast. My name is Jake, and this is coverage of your Seattle Mariners. Today, we have another guest, EastCoastM's. You may have seen him on Twitter and YouTube. He's just over 200 subscribers on YouTube and almost 500 on Twitter. So yeah, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
So you've been kind of on your content grind. I think we all have, realistically, but you're putting out feels like videos left and right. So how has it been going this off season for you?
It's been going good. It's really tough when a trade is made to try to get on it right away. But it's definitely fun to try to keep up, even with like the smaller moves, like signing guys to minor league deals or just letting the fans know about it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely been interesting because I think what people don't really think of is as soon as a trade goes down, it is so important to get on it as soon as possible because that's when you're going to get your peak viewership and all that. It's if you talk about a trade 2 days after, people don't care anymore. They want that immediate satisfaction and that immediate information. So but it's been fun. I will say the first couple months of this off season were kind of a drag, and now we're all excited now. I mean, it feels like a total 180 in the last, just pretty much since Christmas Eve, I would say, when I think the Garver news broke. Since then, it's kind of been a steady rise up, but it's been the tale of two off seasons. If I were to put it any other way, it's like a Jekyll and Hyde. So how have you been feeling about that?
At first it was frustrating. I will agree. I was definitely on the side of let's do something. Are we going to do anything? Where are we at? But yeah, I'm personally very satisfied right now with what Jerry and Justin have done so far. I think there are certain areas that could be improved, but I don't necessarily think they will be. But right now, I definitely think that we have a solid chance of being a playoff team.
Yeah, and I think it's cool because going into the off season and even through Thanksgiving and whatnot, we had those glaring holes where we're just and we weren't even sure if all of them were going to be filled, right? And it's now we don't have any glaring holes. Now it's just a matter of those extra pieces to kind of be almost insurance realistically, which is a lot better feeling than being we just have a black hole at second base or third base or corner outfield. I think, at the end of the day, you could think we're maybe not a playoff team just yet, but in my opinion, I think we have a good shot. And we're going to go over all of that today. We're going to do a whole preview of the 2024 Mariners as it stands right now. At the end of the day, we still have a couple weeks until spring training really begins and the first spring training games happen, so it's possible there's more moves to come. So this could be outdated as soon as literally in an hour, so we're gonna hope that doesn't happen. But before we get into that, let's talk a bit more about you and kind of where you come from. So just really starting from the beginning, as far as baseball and the Mariners concerned, where did that all start for you?
So I've been playing baseball since I was 5, so really back down into the T-ball age. I'm currently a college baseball player at a small school in PA, so definitely kept it going throughout all those years. My body feels it, but only one more year left, so we'll fight through it. But in terms of Mariner, so my dad was a Mariner fan, so we're from New Jersey. So obviously everyone around us is a Phillies fan or a Yankee fan or a Mets fan. And my dad, when he was younger, just absolutely despised the Yankees. So when by the time he became a Mariners fan, the Mariners would always beat the Yankees. So he's like, you know what, I can ride with this team. So he's been a Mariner fan ever since. And then obviously I grew up into it. And he actually gave me a choice when I was younger. He was kind of just like, I'm going to sit you down. Here's all the NFL teams. Here's all the MLB teams. You can either follow me or you could pick your own. And at the end of the day, I was like, I don't want to change. I feel like I enjoy watching these teams. So I've stuck with the Mariners ever since, and I've been really into it. Definitely my top out of all my favorite teams.
Yeah, that's really interesting because that's kind of this. I would say the opposite of how I got into the Mariners too, because I grew up being kind of riding my dad's coattails as far as who to root for, and he's a Giants fan. He grew up in the Bay Area, so started with them for a long time, and then really it's been the last only couple years now where I was like, I want my own thing to root for. And that's when I found the Mariners. I mean, granted, I live in Washington State, so it made geographical sense. It's the only place I can go and
Yeah.
drive a couple hours and I can actually see a game. I can't go to
Exactly.
San Francisco. Right? There's literally nowhere
Yep.
else to go. So, yeah, it's definitely been the, very opposite of your journey there. But
Yep.
when did content creation start for you and decide to start that?
So this is gonna seem interesting, but I started making content when I was like 12.
Mm,
So I started making like video game content and stuff. So I used to play like Call of Duty a lot. So I used to make content on that, and then kind of slowly over time, it started developing into like certain jobs, working with like clothing brands and stuff. And then actually, when I first got to school, I started making like college athlete videos. So I would make videos about like day in the life of a college baseball player, and basically just kind of go through our routine. And then I kind of stopped with that after my sophomore year. It just kind of got to be a lot, playing and editing and filming and doing kind of basically everything on my own. So I kind of stopped with that for a while and I continued doing social media jobs. So I've worked for like internships with bigger companies doing social media and stuff. And then so this past summer, my girlfriend and I lived in Florida. So I would have a lot of time on my hands, like I always watched a lot of the games, but this past summer I was like very like literally watching every game, like even midnight. She was like, "Are you gonna go to sleep ever?" And I was like, "No, like I want to watch the game."
yeah.
And then I kind of came up with the name East Coast M's in the summer, and I changed my X profile to that, but I never actually posted on it. Like I think I posted like 3 things on it in the summer, and then I was kind of like, yeah, like maybe I shouldn't do this. Kind of just a lot of questioning in terms of like actually if I should start it up or not. And then around Thanksgiving time of last year, I was kind of like, you know what, like I know I can do this. Like I know a lot about the Mariners. I feel like I could definitely keep people entertained and let them know things that they may have never thought of before. So that's kind of how it came to fruition, and I've been doing it for 3 months now.
Nice. And you still live in Florida at this point, or you live somewhere else?
No, so I live at school right now. So I'm in PA. We
Okay,
lived in Florida because I had an internship down there.
gotcha.
So we just lived there for the summer.
So when you were in Florida, were you catching a lot of like Marlins games in the meantime? Because I know they didn't play the Mariners, or I think the
Yeah,
Mariners, the Marlins came to T-Mobile, so I guess this year they would go to is it called Lone
yeah,
Depot? I don't remember the name
yeah.
of the park.
Lone Depot, however you say it.
Yeah. So, but
Um,
and they're not going to go to Philadelphia this year either. So that's kind of a
no.
bummer, I guess.
So yeah, so I actually got my girlfriend and I game tickets to go see the Diamondbacks. So we
Okay.
went to Phoenix for our 2 year to go see them play. So I got pictures of like Mike Ford, Jose Caballero, all those type of
Hmm.
guys, autographs from like Justin Topa, Gabe Spire. But it was kind of just a cool experience, and because I had only been to where the Phillies play, Yankees, Orioles, and then I've been to Seattle once. So I went there when I was a sophomore in high school. So those are the only 4 parks I've ever been to. So it was cool to go to Chase Field. It's definitely cool being in like inside in an area, and
Yeah.
it was like 120 degrees when we went. So weather was crazy.
Yeah. Is there any reason why you guys chose Phoenix of all places to go?
So it was kind of like we didn't have too much time to go, so I had to kind of pick like a specific time frame, and I think it was that LA or Houston. And I was kind
Okay.
of like, it was probably more peaceful to go to a game that won't be as rivalry filled.
Oh yeah.
So we were just like, let's go to Phoenix.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I definitely don't have any aspirations to like go to Minute Maid as a
No,
Mariners fan. I
no,
just
definitely not.
absolutely not. I feel like the Angels wouldn't be like that bad because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, like we are kind of like the Angels daddies, but
Mhm.
so I can't really talk too much. But yeah, that makes sense. And at the end of the day, like we're feels like we're pretty almost like I don't want to say like brothers to the Arizona Diamondbacks, but there's kind of been like that Arizona Diamondbacks Mariners
Oh
connection
yeah,
and the last year or so. And like
absolutely.
one of the guys I talk to the most when it comes to just Twitter and all that, Aaron, he is a
Yep.
Diamondbacks writer and he's also
Mhm.
active in the Mariners community. So it's like, there's no bad blood there other than
No.
I think Mike Hazen we need to get a restraining order against that guy because he needs to stop getting our players and fleecing us because this is getting
Literally.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
So but yeah, and then as far as your channels go, like what are your aspirations and I guess your goals for either through the 2024 season and beyond?
I think I want to keep continuing like short form content's kind of my thing. So like anywhere from the 5 to 10 minute time frame. I would like to get like certain guests on, but maybe for not podcasts, I don't think I can personally do them. I'm not great at them. So I definitely think we'll leave that to you to do those. But I would like to get some certain guests on to kind of just like discuss certain things, certain aspects. I'm more of like a behind the scenes kind of guy. So I kind of want to do like maybe series of like more about things you would ask about a player. So, Luis Castillo is extremely good at pitching, but like what's more about him that a fan would want to know?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And at the end of the day, like long form and short form is so different. Like I
Yeah.
think people um just the way that you produce it is so much different, and it's taken a lot to get used to with me kind of doing both. Like
Yeah.
with podcasting, one, you don't have the chance to edit what you say and edit your stutters out like that. I had that huge issue, especially at the
Mm.
start. Like those first few episodes of this podcast were rough. It's gotten a little bit better, and hopefully it continues to get better. But it's like when I get to do edited videos, I'm like, oh, this is so nice. I can just make it
Yeah,
seem like I know what I'm doing, and it's a
exactly.
lot easier. So no, that makes sense. But yeah, so at this point, are you hoping to go to some Mariner games in Seattle this year, or are you kind of hoping more like maybe next year?
Yeah, it's a toss up. I don't know where I'm going to be living after graduation yet. So it's
Okay.
kind of going to be reliant on that, whether, I can get to Seattle if I'm closer, but we'll see. It's going to be a toss up, but I would like to definitely go to a few games.
Would you say there's ever kind of like that goal of working for the Mariners themselves?
So it's actually kind of funny you say that, because I did actually apply for a social media role with the Mariners, and I'm currently I got past the first round of interviews, so I'm currently waiting
Nice.
to see if I get past the second, but I don't want to jinx anything, so we'll just leave it at that.
So eventually you'll be maybe the one that gets to deal with all of the cell comments under
I hope
very
so.
innocent tweets and all
Yeah,
that. So
if that's what it takes, I'll do it.
yeah, I feel like we need to give the social media admin kind of hazard pay at this. It's a
Oh
bit
yeah,
better now that we're
yeah,
like a bit more excited, but
agree.
those first few months must have been so rough. I felt so
Brutal,
bad.
brutal.
Yeah, so we'll get into what the meat of this episode was and why I wanted to have you on, because I want to do a full off-season recap plus a preview to the 2024 Mariners. So to kind of go over who we have sent away first, we'll go over that. Uh, and these are in order. And I'm not gonna label like prospects and whatnot and people in the minors, because at the end of the day, like that's just a lot of other stuff. We're gonna talk about people on the 40 man, or that could be on the 40 man or the 26, I guess.
Yep.
So to start out with, we send away a Eugenio Suarez to the Diamondbacks. That was soul crushing. I would say it was hard. I mean,
Yep.
granted, I get why we sent Gino away. We had the strikeout issues. There's a bit of the decline there. Yeah, I guess where were you feeling when that Gino trade happened?
Let's just say it was very rough to start off the offseason.
Yeah,
I was kind of shocked because I wasn't thinking Gino was going to be part of anything this offseason. I thought he was just going to be our third baseman for however long we had him. The more I think about it, I think as a clubhouse fit, he's a great clubhouse fit. There's no disputing that. Every fan loved him. Everyone loved him. I loved him. I thought he was a great player for us. In terms of his performance, I mean, I don't really think there's any disputing that it's declining. I don't really care so much about his role being like a strikeout home run guy, but last year it was a lot of strikeouts and not a lot of home runs to match it.
yeah,
So in that sense, I think it wasn't the worst thing in the world. I'm gonna miss him personally being on the team, but I don't think in terms of performance perspective that it's the worst thing ever.
yeah. I agree, and I think with that trade too, like we have to understand this was like literally right after that horrible press conference and us losing the division in September. And it's like the first thing you do is you trade away a fan favorite. Like it's
Yeah,
just the order in which we're doing this is, I think, the only reason why there's so much backlash with that. I mean, granted, you could make the argument, same thing with the Kellenic deal, on
yeah,
what we got back could have been better. Even with a salary dump, we could have gotten a little bit more major league pieces, or at
mhm,
least like close to it. But we'll talk about who we got back in a little bit.
yep,
So to move on, next was the Jared Kellenic deal. Along with that was
yep,
also Marco Gonzalez and Evan White. And at the end of the day with Marco, if we were to start with him, because Kalnick's obviously the was the headliner of that,
yep,
it kind of the general consensus I've gotten is it was kind of time for Marco, especially with that contract. Like we were going to be
yeah,
paying what, like 14 mil or something. It was going to be
yeah,
something
a
like
lot.
that for a guy who was like a fringe fifth starter last year. Like he
Mhm.
was not that great. And it just felt like it was kind of that time. So would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree. I think the one thing that stood out to Marco for me was the fact that he was a lefty. So I kind of think he brought that lefty presence. Obviously, Robbie Wright had that as well, but he wasn't going to even pitch until the earliest the summer. And to me, I always loved Marco because I believe I've seen him say, I don't remember where I saw it, but basically he's like, I know I don't throw hard, but that's what makes it so much better when I strike someone out because it's like you're so angry that you can't hit my 92-mile-an-hour fastball. And I just love that approach. Like I think like he's not scared no matter how hard he threw. I just think that that was awesome that he could just go up there and just be like, I'm gonna beat you with a 80-mile-an-hour changeup and you're gonna hate it.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like Marco also did a lot for the team. He was a
Yeah,
clubhouse leader as
agreed.
well. He did a lot of community service as well for Seattle,
Mhm.
both him and his wife. So that sucks to miss, but I
Yeah,
think Pittsburgh got a good one. So
agreed.
hoping for the best for Marco. And then Jared Kelenic was obviously the big
Yeah,
subtraction at that time.
definitely.
So and we were kind of talking a little bit before we went live, where it's like, I think Kellenick did a lot of stuff that made it where it's like if there was going to be a salary dump deal, like Kellenick was going to be the one to go. He's probably one of the first ones on the chopping block, especially after
Yep.
Suarez too. Um, it's kind of, if you know what's been going on with the Mariners and Jared Kellenick, don't really think we have to elaborate like too much on
No.
that. Um, but yeah, that was still the polarizing one. So yeah, we'll talk about Kellenic. What do you think about losing him?
Um, I would say at first it hurts a little bit because I do think that he will reach a point in his career where he will be an all-star. He definitely has the tools, he has the speed, he has the glove, he has the bat. I think the number one issue is obviously his strikeouts. That's definitely something if the approach was going into the offseason, which we know it was, is removing strikeouts, he's definitely going to be a top candidate. I think last year we finally saw some pop that we've been waiting for. You know, he had the 11 home runs. He had that, what, 480-foot bomb in Chicago. Like,
Yeah,
he has the talent. It's there. We know it's there. I think to say that this was a huge loss for us, I would say no. Because if you look at his stats for the 3 seasons he had with us, they're nothing to be like reminisce on per se. So I think he does have the ability, and I think one day he will be an all-star. I just don't think he fit the mold right now in terms of, you can put him out there and trust that he's going to hit 270 going into this year.
yeah, and I'm not gonna say that the Mariners, at least like the front office or whoever you want to blame, didn't kind of do him dirty, especially in the early part
Oh,
of his
agreed.
career. Absolutely
Absolutely.
did. So I get a bit of the sentiment there. But and at the end of the day too, like with the cooler incident last year that everyone talks about, like my take is kind of, I don't want to say like fence riding in a way, but like one part is like that had to have been a personal thing. At the end of, we never know what's going on in these players' personal lives, so I can't like rag on it too much, but at the same time we also can't like deny that it hurt the team. Like
Mhm.
plain and simple, I'm not going to say that Jared Kelenic kicking the cooler in July or June or whenever it was is the reason we missed the playoffs or whatever. That's just ridiculous, because at the end of the day it's a whole team effort, and there, plus trust me, there was a lot of different reasons why the roster last year didn't make it to the playoffs, and Jared Kelenic wasn't the only reason.
No,
However, we're not going to just like deny that it hurt. Plain and
no, I
simple,
agree.
not having him in the lineup and as an option was not good for us. So
Yeah,
you know
I would agree.
yeah, but we'll leave it at that. So the next one was Robbie Ray. We sent him away to the San
Yeah,
Francisco Giants. um it's hard with Robbie because he was probably not going to help us a whole lot in 2024. And a lot of the moves, as we've kind of seen them happen, a lot of these moves at the end of the day are kind of like, let's win in 2024. Let's try to, take advantage of this window with Robbie being out for potentially until August, maybe
yep,
even longer. Kind of makes sense still. At the end of the day, he is a former Cy Young winner. It's difficult to give those guys up, but I think it's just a matter of he wasn't going to help us this year, really. So, is that kind of
yeah.
where you're at with that?
Yeah, I'd say that. I think Robbie Ray kind of gets a bad rep in Seattle. I think he did more than people realize. Obviously, his highlight is the Jordan Alvarez home run, which is unfortunate. But that's a tough situation for anyone to go in. And, we're going to blame, at the end of the day, fans are going to blame whoever gave up that home run, if anyone did. But like you said, he won the Cy Young in 2021. He's definitely a guy that will help a team out in some aspect, whether he's their number one or he's their number five. But yeah, I think for the circumstance and for the window and the tight frame that we're in, I don't think it was a horrible move. I think they maybe could have got a little more for him, considering they traded away Desclafani anyway. But I don't think it was a bad move.
Yeah, I agree with that. And literally the same day, we dealt away Jose Caballero to the Tampa Bay Rays.
Yep.
Um, feel like at the end of the day, I don't think any of us are, kicking ourselves that Caballero is sent away, especially with what we got back, which we'll talk about. But yeah, Cabby was still a good, fiery player. He stood up for himself. We saw it against, Martin Maldonado, which,
Yep.
have my feelings about that guy. um, so, but yeah, it was nice to have that kind of like that fire in the lineup, that guy who was ready to like go if he needed to. So, and he was speedy. He was a little reckless on the base pass, which was kind of frustrating, especially with the
Yep.
speed he had. But yeah, yeah, with Jose Caballero being gone.
So personally, Cabby was my guy. Like when I went to Arizona, he was the guy that I wanted to like meet, and I knew when I would stand there, nobody was gonna be screaming his name. So the second he walked by, I screamed. He came over. I took a picture with him, all that. But to me, he was like exactly what you said, that fiery guy. He was just mentally getting the heads of pitchers, and I feel like that's something that you don't really see anymore, because pitchers are just very loosey goosey, go out like whatever, don't focus on guys in the base pass, don't worry about the pitch clock, like it's all on them.
Mhm.
So I think he really got in their heads, and I personally love that about him.
Yeah, and hopefully we can have someone else that can do that this year.
Yep.
We need that. You all, it feels like every roster needs that like one guy that's kind of just, I
Yeah.
don't want to say like a hothead, but just that guy who is ready to throw down when need be,
Hmm.
and
I agree.
is
Yep.
standing on business, as they say.
Exactly.
And then the last two was Justin Topa and Anthony
Mhm.
DeSclafani. I say Anthony DeSclafani is a subtractive kinda because didn't pitch with
Yeah.
us at all.
Exactly.
So I don't really, I'm not really going to get into him, but I guess we'll get into Justin Topa. Clutch last year for us.
Yeah. Definitely.
Came from literally nowhere and became
Hmm.
one of our high leverage arms. So it sucks to see him go. He seems like a really great dude too,
Yep.
and was clearly a bit of a bullpen clubhouse leader. Because it feels
Yep.
like bullpen guys have their own culture when it comes to it.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
yeah. So where are you at with Justin Topa?
I definitely think that it's a big loss in terms of the pen. But I think when you turn around and look who the reliever we just got is, I think it's kind of like one of those in the past things. I think Justin was great for us last year and definitely going to miss him in his role because he was awesome to watch. But I do think we definitely replaced him in a good aspect, and I
Yep.
think being essentially the centerpiece of that trade, I think we really can't complain.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We'll talk about who we got for that. So we'll go
Yep.
into the additions now. So the first one from the Suarez deal, we got Carlos Vargas and Sebi Zavala back. Feels like there's not a whole lot to talk about with Sebi Zavala in the sense of he is not an offensive guy; he's strictly a defensive guy, pretty
Yep.
much. And
Very much so.
he's going to be playing that 1 to 2 times a week, and that's max. He's just a backup
Yep.
catcher.
Yep.
Usually not the most notable. I mean, granted, Tom Murphy was pretty notable last year.
Yeah.
I wish we could have kept him
Yeah.
because he
Uh,
was at one point he was one of our best hitters in our lineup. He
yeah.
was
He
solid.
was. Yeah.
Yeah, so that sucks. And then Carlos Vargas, I think he's kind of that diamond in the rough. Like he's not guaranteed to make the bullpen or the
No.
26-man bullpen. However, he has some good stuff. And from what I've heard, when it comes to like who is that diamond in the rough that is most likely to potentially be a high leverage arm for us later in the year, I hear
Hmm.
Vargas's name a lot. So what
Yeah.
do you know about Vargas?
So yeah, I actually did a video kind of covering after the Santos trade went down. I did a video kind of covering like we could have four flamethrowers in our bullpen. I like Carlos Vargas. I think he's extremely wild. Kind of gives me Randy Johnson beginning of his career energy. I mean, if you look at him pitch, he has a very similar arsenal as someone like Santos does. He throws. He's reached 100 multiple times. He's maxed out. I think his fastball at 101 point something. So the potential is there. I think right now he has a long way to go. But I think if anyone's going to deal with him, it is our pitching coaches. So I do agree with that. That maybe after the All Star break, he could be a guy that comes up and is going to sit 100 mile an hour on his fastball and sinker and has a gross slider.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him when he because I feel like he's gonna pitch for us this year at some
Mhm.
point. I just don't know if it'll be opening day. Probably won't be, but
No.
I'm excited to see his stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, when a guy has top velocity on a fastball, he has some good
Mhm.
breaking stuff as well. Feel like a lot of it is like command for him. Maybe it's like once he can figure that out, and command is teachable. At the end of the day, it's fixable.
Exactly.
The if he was having problems with his stuff, right? Like that's a bit harder to fix. Command
Mhm.
is fixable.
I agree.
So if they can get him to and develop him like we know the Mariners can with relievers,
Mhm.
I think we have a lot of good options, and he's one of them. Um, the other guy we got from the Kellenic deal, we had one prospect who's in rookie ball, so we won't talk about him too much because ultimately he's not going to matter until like
Yep.
2028 at least. We'll see. We got Jackson Kowar, who
Mhm.
I'm a little not sure about in the sense of, I mean, he's pitched in the major leagues and he has like a 9 something ERA, so it's like
Yep.
he's definitely got work to go on. I definitely think they're gonna put him in the minors to start out the
Yep.
year, let him develop and see where he goes. Is there anything you want to note about Kowar?
Not too much. I think he's going to be more of your long middle inning guy. I don't think he's going to be very overpowering. I think he's going to be very bat like contact oriented. Get those ground ball double plays, stuff like that. But no, nothing crazy. I mean, again, I think we could have gotten a lot more in return for what we did. But again, I think the Mariners develop pitchers very well, and they got a ton of them this offseason, and they're going to see which ones stick and which ones don't.
Yep. Yeah, and Kowar was kind of the last addition that we made that was not the most notable. And now we're going to get into kind of the guys who are going to 100% be on the opening day roster as long as they don't
Mhm.
get injured in spring training or something.
Yep.
So to start, signing Mitch Garver, first multi-year deal to a offensive player in the Jerry Dipoto era. So
Yep.
DH Mitch Garver, got him. We got our full-time DH, which was, we were like the worst last year in
Mhm.
DH. So it'll
Yep.
definitely be nice. And especially with his injury history, one, I hope we can get 120 games out of him. I'll feel pretty decent about that.
Agreed.
But him being that full time DH is going to be the best option for getting him to be as healthy as possible. His dude's got pop. When he's playing, he is an all star caliber bat.
Yes.
That's just how he's been his whole career, pretty much.
Easily.
So I would say I'm super excited to have him. And also, just outside of his offensive prowess, like the dude has said on multiple interviews, like he's pretty much been like, I wanted to come to Seattle. I wanted to be a
Hmm.
part of what they're building here. And it's like, finally, someone just
Yep.
chooses us,
Exactly.
So
Yep.
yeah, how are you hyped on Garver this year?
Well, Jerry kind of messed me up because it was Christmas Eve and I
Yeah.
was in Argentina for because our school makes us go on a go trip, they're called. So we were in Argentina. So I was already 6 hours ahead of you guys.
Mm,
So it was already 9 o'clock at night. We were eating dinner on Christmas Eve. And I had to go back to the hostel and film a video. But I was extremely excited to see Mitch Garver. I was excited to see, again, like you said, it's a 2 year deal. So you're going to get at least hopefully, if he's healthy, a full time DH for the next 2 years. And I think the one thing in terms of health is the fact that he's not going to catch. So I think that's one thing that's kind of being overlooked is, yeah, he has a long injury history, but he was catching during most of those times. So now you completely remove that. You say, Mitch, you're a DH every single day until whenever you need an off day, let us know, whatever it may be. But he is literally going to be just hitting. So unless there's a freak accident like kind of happened with Mitch last year, we got hit by that pitch and had to miss time. In terms of Mitch Haniger, not Mitch Garver.
yep.
But he got hit by that pitch. Unless some crazy thing like that happens, I think he will get 120 games in this year, like without a doubt.
Yeah, and that's what helps with having Zavala on the accidentally hit the wrong button. We're not going to edit that out either. I don't really care. But that's one thing that helps with Zavala being on the roster is although when he plays, he's going to be kind of a bit of a black hole offensively, most likely
Mhm.
than not. He is that insurance to make sure Garver doesn't have to catch. And that is
Exactly.
ultimately what is going to help us more than anything.
Yep.
And then next we got both of these are on the same day. We got Mitch Haniger and Luke Rayleigh as well. So we'll start with Mitch. Obviously, we all know Mitch. There's not really a whole
Yes.
lot to say
Nope.
about him that hasn't been said 10,000 times over.
Mhm.
If he stays healthy, We can hope that he will be a decent bat for us. It's not really a for sure thing, even if he's healthy. But that's really still the name of the game with pretty much a lot of the roster is if
Yeah.
they stay healthy, then we
Mhm.
can be a good team. But yeah, how hyped were you to see Haniger coming back and he's going to be in that teal again?
Yeah, I don't know if hype's the right word. I think just like more like shocked. I
Okay.
feel like it was just like Mitch Haniger, like what? Like we literally just got rid of him. He just got a 3-year deal with the Giants. Like he's going somewhere else for most of his career, and then
Hmm.
he's just back for a Cy Young pitcher that we had.
Yeah.
But I was very excited to see Mitch back. I think that to me, and this might be a little bit of a hot take, but I think if Mitch is healthy, he puts up over 20 home runs without a doubt. Like he has that power. Like in the last season, full season he played with us, he had the 21 home runs. Like there really is no disputing that he has the power. He can hit it out in T-Mobile Park. He has no issue. So for me, I think it's more of like an if he's healthy, not necessarily, if he's healthy and he can try to keep up. I think he will keep up, and I think he can easily hit 250 with 20 plus home runs. That's just my personal opinion,
Yeah.
but
I would love that, especially with a platoon with Canzone, which is kind of what the projection
yeah,
is at this point. Yeah, I hope we can get that Mitch because it'll be so critical that we get
yes.
at least league average. And that was my thing with last year's team, is that if half of those guys didn't regress to below league average and they just stayed at league average. So not I'm not talking all stars, just league
Hmm.
average, we probably are playing playoff baseball. That's the thing.
Absolutely.
So it's like I'm
Absolutely.
not asking for any of these guys to be all-star caliber people. Like I just want to see league average at least. Like that's what I'm hoping
Hmm.
for. Um
Agreed.
but yeah, and then next was Luke Rayleigh, who I think is probably one of the most interesting additions that we've had in the sense of it's just you're not completely sure what you're going to get from him, but when he has the makings for being a good player and potentially even all-star caliber for us, we'll see.
Mhm.
But at the same time, like we don't really know for sure, but he plugs up that left field hole, so he's pretty much like the Kellenic replacement, so
Mhm.
we'll see how that goes. But yeah, what do you have to say for Rayleigh?
I think he's being extremely overlooked. I think a lot of people are like, why? Like, okay, yeah, the deal itself was crazy. Like Jose for him straight up, ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of just his playing ability, and he is almost like a 5 tool player in a way. His size that he can steal bags like that is like what? Like this guy's what? I think he's like 6'2", 6'3", like
Yeah, and he's like
225,
90th
230.
something percentile in speed or
Yeah,
something.
like that's insane. He can play anywhere. He can play first anywhere in the outfield. He has that speed where he can play center. To me, I think it's very different to say because usually when the Mariners are signing like anywhere from a 30 to 34-year-old, it's a guy that's a veteran. And he's really not a veteran. He had his first full year last year with the Rays. I think he's a guy that can put up. He's obviously more on the high K percentage, but I think he can put up 25 home runs like it's nobody's business. I think he will be a very good left fielder, everyday left fielder. But yeah, I'm extremely excited to see him play. I think he's being overlooked a lot. And I think he has the ability to be better than Clinic was for us, without a doubt.
Yeah, and if I remember right, I think he's a lefty hitter too. So,
Yes.
that even plays a lot better for our ballpark anyways. And we really
Hmm.
needed the kind of like a good lefty bat in our
Exactly.
outfield. So
Yep.
hopefully he can help out with us for that. Next was probably the most hyped addition that we made. That was the Jorge Polanco deal for the Minnesota Twins. And a lot of the reason it was hyped is because we had that glaring hole either second base or third base. We need to fill one of them to move Rojas and Urias over to the other not vacant spot so they can platoon because ultimately it's going to be a whole lot better if we platoon them than if we play them one and like they're both in the lineup at the same time.
Hmm.
And Jorge Polanco solved that issue that we had.
Yep.
And so I'm excited to see him play. Jorge has legit power. He has that ceiling of potentially 40-ish home runs,
Hmm.
potentially. Like from a second baseman, like I would absolutely dig that. I'll take any.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, I think we'll take anything past what we had with Wong and Caballero last year. So it's gonna be easy to like Jorge in that way.
Hmm.
And he's just an overall good player. So yeah, what do you have to say about Polanco?
I really like the trade. I actually did a video covering this because I think the number one thing that comes into a Mariners fan's head is okay, we've got Adam Frazier and Colton Wong, who were veterans who showed that they can play for years on end, and they came in and were disappointments. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. Frazier obviously was better than Wong. Wong was really just a fluke. Like I don't even know what to call that because he's never played like that in his career ever. And I don't think when we sign guys like Frazier and Wong, we would think like, oh, these guys aren't going to be our everyday second baseman. Like these are guys, these are veteran guys that are going to come in, hit for high average, not a lot of power, but they're going to give you a 280 season. And they didn't do that. And I think that Jorge Polanco is going to be a wild card in the sense where we don't have to worry about him. I think him being a switch hitter plays a factor in that. And I also think the fact that he has the power to hit it out in T-Mobile without a problem is also going to play a factor in the sense that he doesn't need to change his approach. So the one thing I talked about in my video was like how Wong and Frazier, you could tell just by how they hit, and they changed their entire approach. They stopped using left field as much. They stopped trying to go the other way. They had a lot of doubles in their previous years down the left field line. They didn't do that with the Mariners. So I don't think for Polanco he has to change his approach at all, which is something that, at least in my personal opinion, makes me trust him more to come in and do what he's done his whole career.
Yeah, and the other part about Jorge being switch at the end of the day, most starting pitchers are righties. That means he's going to be on the left-handed side of the bat
Yep.
of the home plate most of the time. And as we know, T-Mobile caters to lefties at the end of the day. So it's like he's
Yes.
going to have most of his plate appearances on that side of the plate. That
Mhm.
is a huge advantage for us. Um,
Absolutely.
so just plain and simple. And also, I love Jorge in the sense that he said he's super scared of ghosts, which I think is hilarious. So I think he's going to be a good character too that people can kind
Yep.
of get behind.
I agree.
Another one we made was Samad Taylor from the Kansas City Royals. That was for a player to be named later, so we'll see. But usually that's not anyone significant. So yeah, Samad Taylor. I don't know a whole lot about him to be honest with you, but what do you know about Samad?
Not a ton. I know he has speed. He offers speed. He is more going to be like a depth kind of guy. I think they're going to want to put him in a Haggerty or Moore kind of role. Because I know another hot take, but I don't know how much longer you can really trust those guys. I think their role is their role. They're not really going to change that. I don't think they're going to make their way to be an everyday player. Obviously, they're two different players in the sense that Moore offers a lot more power, while Haggerty offers a lot more speed. But I think yeah, he's definitely a depth addition just in case anyone gets hurt or whatever it may be. I think he's just going to be a guy that they're going to keep there. Going to see what he can do down in AAA, and then kind of bring him up when they feel like he's ready to be in that platoon like utility kind of role.
Yeah, if anything, I could see him being kind of the Haggerty replacement if we
Yeah,
decide that he's not living up to what he should be next year, because
agree.
he has that speed, so it's a bit closer of a 1-to-1 matchup on that.
Yeah,
But Samad is mainly a second baseman as well. Obviously, he's not going to like get the job over Polanco or anything, but
no,
he may have to slot in there if Polanco gets hurt. Hopefully not, crossing our fingers.
yeah, literally.
But at the end of the day, like he's going to be kind of a Haggerty type is kind of my general idea for him. So we'll see. There's a possibility he doesn't even play for us this year.
Yeah.
Who knows? And then the last one, which was the most recent one, was Gregory Santos, the reliever, who I would say was kind of like the second most hyped signing.
Hmm.
Because dude is electric. He has great stuff, and it was kind of I don't want to say under the radar move in the sense of like, I mean, people know who Santos is for the most part. Like I didn't before, but I think people didn't expect that. They didn't know he was going to be available, and yeah, I'm really excited. He bolsters that back into the bullpen perfectly,
Hmm.
because now you go from Santos to Brash to Munoz or whatever order you want to put that in, and you're facing three straight guys who are in the high 90s to low 100s on their fastball, and
Hmm.
all three have nasty breaking stuff when they're working well. It's like I don't. Personally, I think it's going to be the top, maybe the best back three or back end of the bullpen in baseball next year.
Absolutely.
So, in going into this season, we weren't sure who that was going to be. Like, was it going to be a Topa Brash Munoz for a second year in a row?
Mm.
We didn't know, and now it's pretty glaringly obvious.
Yes,
So,
very
what do you
much.
think about Santos?
I mean, I love it. I mean, I don't know how we could even complain about this trade.
Yeah,
You got a guy in the back of our bullpen. To me, he fits more of the reliever type. So I could very much see him transitioning into being a full-time reliever. So he's strictly ninth inning, kind of just that guy out of the pen. Because I think Brash fits better in the 6, 7 innings because he knows he was a starting pitcher, so he knows how to get out of those situations. And he's always been that guy, bases loaded, nobody out, one out. You're going to Brash. Um, and then I think Munoz is a very good eighth inning guy. I think he could develop into a closing role, but I think right now, with the way he pitches, I think he's much better in the eighth inning. And I think Santos coming out in the ninth. I mean, you are literally facing guys who throw 100 miles an hour with disgusting sliders 3 innings in a row. So if you're down by 2 or 3 runs, good luck coming back.
Yeah, and I personally think, my opinion is I would move Munoz actually down a bit. And the
Mhm.
reason why I say that is because my general feeling with Munoz last year and some of the struggles he was having was he was kind of that pseudo, or he was kind of like slotted into that closer role when Seawald left, and
Mhm.
it just felt like he was not comfortable with having
I
that
agree.
ninth inning situation. So I personally think until he can kind of get that confidence and whatnot, would prefer maybe going Munoz, Santos, Brash, or whatever. I don't really like the idea of having a specific like closer guy who only
Yeah,
comes in on save opportunities because, especially with like a Brash, right? Like I want him to pitch as much as possible. Personally, I want to
yeah,
see him
I
pitch
agree.
another 70 plus games again if he
Mhm.
can do that. So I don't really want to restrict any of them. But yeah, that's kind of my take on the back end. I think Munoz kind of put him down, just so he can get that confidence back, because it felt like a lot of it was mental
Yeah,
for him. And so, and we even kind of learned that there was that one time where he like had to get taken out of the game randomly, worried if
yeah,
he was injured. Turns out it was like a panic attack or something. It was something like that.
yeah,
So yeah, I would much rather see him kind of in that sixth, seventh
yeah,
role. So we'll see what
yeah,
they decide to do. But yeah, so that's it for the off season, and now we're going to get into the 2024 roster and talking a bit more
yeah.
about that and its makeup. So sorry if you're an audio only listener, because I did make some visuals as well, so you can head over to YouTube if you're on audio only. If you're on YouTube, then great, you can see this. Did my best on this as well. So we're going to start with the offensive side of things.
Mhm.
So basically we have, and what's projected, and I went off the MLB.com depth chart. So one, this could be different on opening day depending on how spring training goes. But I have to go off of something, so I decided MLB.com depth chart made the most sense. So basically at the one, at the one that's pitching, so we'll get into that in a minute. So I guess at the two, we have catcher
Yep.
Cal Raleigh. At the three, we have first baseman Ty France. At the four, second baseman Jorge Polanco. I believe five is actually third base, so we got Luis Urias and Josh Rojas as a platoon there. At the six, we have J.P. Crawford at shortstop. At the seven, Luke Rayleigh as our left fielder. Obviously, Julio is at the eight in our center field position. And then in the nine, we have right fielders Mitch Haniger and Dominic Canzone as a platoon as well. And then have to mention, I always forget, DH Mitch Garver is there as well. I don't have like a way of going over like who's going to be the right-handed lineups or left-handed lineups, so we're not going
Mhm.
to get into all that stuff. But yeah, this is what it's looking like as far as the projected outcome for our opening day roster on the offensive side. Um, so when you're looking over this compared to 2023, like what are you notating, or what's going through your head as far as like how you're feeling about this roster?
I think the DH spot is way better. I think it has the ability to be way more consistent than it was last year. I think the DH average was 211 last year. I think Mitch Garver can easily surpass that with 25 plus home runs, but that's just my take. I think for the most part, obviously Ty is bound for a better year than he had last year. Cal's going to do Cal things. JP's going to do JP things. Julio's going to do Julio things. In terms of right field, I mean, I know Teoscar last year was obviously a very not hated player. I don't want to say hated, but very frustrating to watch at points because he literally had a hole in his bat and he would swing at pitches he knows he shouldn't be swinging at.
Yeah.
But I think that in terms of his production, it's going to be hard to top that because he did put up obviously over 30 home runs and I think it was over 90 RBIs in terms of Mitch and Dom, but I do think they could do it. Um, Left field, I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that may disagree, but I think Luke Raley is an upgrade over JK, just solely based off last year and his very good ability to hit lefty pitching. And in the small sample size he had, he showed he can hit it. So I think he definitely has a large possibility of being an upgrade there. In terms of third base, I think that Luis Urias and Josh Rojas are very different players in the way they both play, but also very different from Gino as well. I don't think either one of them is going to put up a 40 home run season like Gino can. But I do think that Urias offers more of the power, and Josh Rojas will offer more of the average. So I think Josh Rojas could easily hit over 270, and Urias could put over 20 home runs. So yeah, that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, and it's like when I look at this too, it feels a lot more, I would say, balanced, and I
Mhm.
feel a lot better with this. I would say that I'm still a little, um, I guess, skeptical about Rayleigh. I would like to have maybe an extra guy in that left field position, or someone who could still play both center field and left field there. But otherwise, like, it's kind of hard to not feel better about this than last year, because we have to remember, like, that DH going into 2023 was Tommy LaStella. uh, and then we had like Taylor
Yeah.
Trammell and like Cade Marlowe or whatever. And it's like now we have Mitch Garver, who, as
Mhm.
we've said, when he's healthy, he is an
He
all-star
rakes.
caliber bat. Straight
Hmm.
up. There's really no denying it. So that it just feels a lot better, especially at the end of 2023 once all the injuries happened.
Hmm.
Um, with like Mitch Haniger and Canzone, like compared comparative to Teoscar, I could see more I guess consistent bats than him.
Hmm.
Teoscar's ultimately probably going to have more power than either of them
Yeah.
are. We can hope that Haniger is going to have some of his power stroke back, but it's
Hmm.
just not a guarantee.
No.
But they're also going to be both, in my opinion, better fielders than Teoscar, because Teoscar
Yeah.
was part of what was frustrating about him was watching him play outfield was cringy to say the least. Whereas with Canzone, like there was a few times last year when he was, going under those pop flies or those line drives where it seemed a little shaky. He
Yeah.
still made the play. That's all that
Agreed.
ultimately matters. I don't care how bad you look. If you make the plays, that's all I care about.
Exactly.
So whereas Teoscar wasn't. So we'll just put that out there. Um, that middle part of the infield too, just the whole middle section of that whole field, going from Cal Raleigh to JP to Jorge Polanco to Julio. um just how could you not feel great about that? And
Absolutely.
because last year when you looking at second base, you had Colton Wong, so it was like Cal Raleigh, Colton Wong, JP Crawford, and Julio. It's like you have
Mhm.
Polanco now. It's like that middle part of the lineup is looking great.
Yeah.
um Obviously, like you said with Mitch, like, or I already kind of talked about him, so we'll move on from that. But Urias and Rojas, feeling good about that too. They are pretty much perfect for a platoon, as has
Yep.
already been stated. I would maybe worry a little bit with Rojas as far as his defensive capability there, but we'll see. And then Ty France, you know, I hope he has that bounce back year. I'm not necessarily going to expect like 2021 Ty France, but I just need a bit more from him than we got last year. Just
I
pretty
agree.
much as I said earlier, league average is all I really care about. Just want league
Yep.
average Ty France. I also need pitchers to stop hitting him. He needs to wear like a Kevlar vest or something. I know
Yep.
quarterbacks wear those like flak jackets. He needs to
Hmm.
wear something
Yep.
because it's getting ridiculous.
Yep.
But yeah, so that's kind of a visual aid there as far as what we're looking at for the 2024 offensive roster. Please leave a comment down below on how you're feeling. But ultimately, I think it's really hard to deny that comparative to 2023, this is a more balanced roster. Um,
Absolutely.
the one downside, and I've said this before and I'll keep saying it, injuries are the big thing that's going to make or break the season. So
Hmm.
we can afford one guy to get hurt, whatever. But if like two or more get hurt that are key players for us, we're going to be struggling because our depth isn't great. But at the end of the day, all we can do is cross our fingers and hope. There's no way to
Agreed.
know for sure how that's going to go.
Nope.
So yeah, that's gonna be for the offense. And next, we're gonna go into the starting pitcher rotation. Is gonna be first, uh, same as last year, pretty much. So not to start the year, but to end of the year. Luis Castillo's the one, Kirby's the two, Gilbert's the three, Bryce Miller and Brian Wu ended out. And yeah, what are you thinking about the starting pitching rotation?
It's absolutely stacked. I don't really think there's any arguing that. I think one of the thing that is very impressive as well for some of these offseason trades that we've got is we didn't give up Miller or Wu. We had been discussing that kind of the whole offseason, like, are we gonna have to give up Wu or Miller to get a big bat in here? I don't think we necessarily got a huge bat in here, an all star. Like I think some guys have the potential to be an all star, but I'm not like a wow bat. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Um, but I think in terms of the starting pitching, I think Kirby's going to have a career year. I think Gilbert is going to have a similar year, if not better than last year. Castillo needs to have a better year. I don't really think there's any arguing that. I think last year there's a lot of talk, obviously, on Kirby being the ace, but that's not why we brought Luis in here. We brought Luis in to be the ace.
Yep.
So I really think he needs to improve this year and definitely get that home run count down because he gave up a lot of home runs when it really just wasn't needed. We really just need to avoid those. I think Miller and Wu, I don't think setting a super high bar on them is fair. I think putting up, Wu a little bit better numbers this year and possibly learning some longevity because obviously he has the injury history, so they were very short on his innings last year. But it would be nice to see him, average 5.7 innings a start or something like that. And just kind of with those two, I would just focus on like just improving. Honestly, I don't think it's fair to say, get him Cy Young votes, get him this, get him that. I think just honestly for them, it's just really just improving their craft, and for Miller working on breaking balls and really being able to implement that into his arsenal.
Yeah, I agree. At the end of the day, this is, in my opinion, a top three rotation in baseball. There's no question. Castillo, like you said, has to have a better year. I do still think he is our ace in the sense of I felt like Kirby, especially in the second half of the last year, pretty much after the Baltimore start, it felt like was having some trouble, and part of it is just Kirby is a god when it comes to command and control, but that means that people are going to be more aggressive with him, and that's how they're going to attack him. Felt like he didn't really have too much of an answer for that, and so there was just those starts where he would just get roughed up.
Yeah.
And it was clearly that he wasn't having also like the best, like I guess like mental time in a way, especially towards the end. We had obviously that incident in Tampa Bay where he made that comment about staying in the game, which wasn't received very well. So I do think he's still not necessarily the ace yet, but at the end of the day, he has the potential. He has the potential to be a Cy Young
Absolutely.
candidate. I think he's
Mm-hmm.
gonna win one at some point in his career. Hopefully, it's with the Mariners. Logan Gilbert, I would actually, and I don't know if this is a hot take either, but in my opinion, he was the most consistent pitcher we had last year. I felt better when Gilbert was on the mound than Castillo or Kirby or anyone else. I felt like I know what I was getting with Logan.
Yep.
Even if his numbers weren't as good as Kirby or Castillo, it felt like it wasn't so much of a Jekyll and Hyde type scenario that we were
Mm-hmm.
having with Castillo and Kirby. So I'm hopeful for Logan. He's definitely one of my favorite players in general. I think he is great, and he also has that Cy Young potential. I think
Yep.
that top three alone, if any of them won the Cy Young this year, I wouldn't be surprised at
No,
all. I
not
wouldn't
at
be
all.
surprised if Logan Gilbert won it because he has the potential there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but obviously, the most interesting part of this is Miller and Wu. And as you said, not dealing them away this year was huge, in my opinion,
Absolutely.
for this roster because granted there's a bit of unknowns with them with their innings count. Obviously Miller was a bit more than Wu, but I don't remember if it was Hollander or Depoto. One of them plainly said they're not going to be on innings limits this year,
Yeah.
so they are expected to be full on starters, basically. That gives me a bit of I want to say hesitation, but it worries me a little bit, especially with Wu with the injury history.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think both of them have very different pitchers, but both of them have that potential to be quality starters. I pretty much would hope that if both of them end the year under like a 4.5 ERA, feeling pretty good about that.
Yeah.
I would be fine. And as you said, if they can be averaging 5 to 6 innings per game, feeling good about that too.
Great.
Because last year, especially at the end, I think they were limiting to Wu to, I mean, he was pretty much only getting like 3 to 5 innings per game. So it's got to bump that up for sure, or
Yep.
else our bullpen is going to get tired, and that's going to suck.
Agreed.
But
Yep.
at the end of the day, like Miller been working on that splitter, I think it
Mm-hmm.
was, and Logan did the same thing. And Logan, if you look at the numbers on that splitter, it was like one of his best pitches last year, and he
Mm-hmm.
debuted it last year. So hopefully Miller can get the same, because if he can get that good already plus fastball, one of the best fastballs in the game, if he can get that going and then have that splitter that goes kind of down and away and make it look the same, right? Like get that tunneling to work well, he's going to be nasty. He's going to be
Yeah.
hard to hit off of, plain and
Hmm.
simple. And then with Brian Wu, he's just a bit more of a versatile pitcher. He already kind
Yeah.
of has multiple pitches that can work, and it's just really about refining and developing because he's still young. So
Yep.
at the end of the day, it's hard to feel bad about this rotation. If you feel bad
Yeah.
about that, then I'm sorry, you're a miserable person, and that's ridiculous. So yeah, I'm feeling great, and you know, a lot of the season hinges off of this rotation and how they
Yep.
do. So
I agree.
yeah, that's going to be it for the rotation. And lastly, we are going to get into the bullpen. So this is the projected seven that are going to be in opening day. So Austin Voth is at the end and Trent Thornton. And we have Gabe Spire, Taylor Saucedo, and then that last three of Gregory Santos to Brash to Munoz. So yeah, how are you feeling about the bullpen as is projected right here?
I love it. I think if Sauce and Gabe can have a year that they did last year, I think we're in very good shape. I think Trent Thornton, for what he went out and did his job. There really is no disputing that. Austin Voth, I don't know too much about him. He strikes me more of a middle inning guy who's going to get about 2 innings whenever we need it out of him. And like we discussed before, I think Munoz, Brash, and Santos, I mean, good luck. Really, truly just good luck because it reminds me, as much as I hate to even compare to this garbage team, the Astros, with the way that they have their bullpen oriented. It's very 1, 2, 3 at the end, and you're basically good luck to you if you can beat them, because it's not going to happen too often. And I kind of think that we've developed that, and I think that Santos is came out of nowhere. I mean, there really is no way to put it. I truly had never heard much about him before he got traded to us. And you look up his Savant page and you're just like, wow, this dude's legit. Like he's got good stuff. I mean, if you just watch his video, he has a slider that'll go off the plate, and then he'll have a sinker and a fastball, and all three of them go in different directions. So
Yep.
good luck trying to guess that. I do like that we do have Sauce and Gabe as the lefties because we definitely need some good lefties in our pen for matchup based situations. But I think this bullpen is looking good, and I think there's potential for guys down in the minors to come up and make some waves as well. So I think this bullpen is much better than it looked, when we left last season.
Yeah, and I think we also, just the same as the rotation, this is potentially top three bullpen in baseball as well. You can maybe say top five, whatever you want,
Mm.
but yeah, at that bottom part, like I know they were saying that they're gonna look into Thornton or Voth, kind of extending their innings and could even be spot starters if need be
Yep.
next year. So that'll be interesting. Because that if they do spot start, that usually means that we'll probably get a couple new guys in the bullpen as well, to replace them. And so and we have a whole stockpile. We talked about Vargas earlier. I know there's a few others. Technically, Coar could be one of those guys.
Yep.
So we'll see. But as projected, like this is looking great. I already talked a lot about that back end of the bullpen, so I'm not going to do that too much now. But in my opinion, Spire is probably still your like high leverage lefty guy over Saucedo still. But I still Saucedo could easily take that.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I feel great at this because even if we're getting blown out, right, that's when you put in your bottom end of the bullpen to kind of clean up those innings. You potentially have Voth that can
Mhm.
and Thornton, who if they can pitch 3-4 innings, will help with the bullpen health if we
Yep.
have those games, which is bound to happen at the end of the day. Like that's
Absolutely.
just how baseball works.
Yep.
But even if it is a close game, like pretty much as soon as you start with Spire, like you're gonna have a hard time. Spire,
Yep.
Saucedo, Santos, Brash, Munoz, that five alone, you're gonna have a tough time. And
Yeah.
I'm feeling great about this bullpen.
I agree.
You know, so I think like at the end of the day, when we're looking at our whole 2024 roster, right? It's like I think there's no doubt in my mind that at the end of 2023, this roster now going into 2024 is better,
Yep. I
100%.
agree.
Where do you hope that, or I guess not hope, but of course we all hope that they win the World Series, but where do you
Mhm.
think this roster is going to end the year at when it comes to September and the end of September?
So to me, you want in like number of wins kind of deal, or like
It doesn't
where I
have to be
want them
number
to
of
be
wins,
like.
but like, do you think they're going to win the division? Do you think they're going to be a wild card team? Like, where do you think they're going to land at?
I think they have a solid chance at winning the division. I think that if everything stands as is, I don't think the Astros and Rangers have done enough to say they've gotten better. Obviously, you have Josh Hader at the back of the Astros bullpen, which is new. It's obviously not going to be easy, but like I said in one of my tweets, I said we had a great record against the Astros last year, and when you beat them 10-1, he doesn't play a factor. So you keep playing with that. We got to beat Texas more this year, and if they don't get Montgomery back, that's going to be a huge loss to their starting five, without a doubt. I think a realistic goal is to say that this team, like if I was a betting man and I had to put money on something, I would put money on this team getting at least a wild card spot.
Yep.
I don't think there's really any disputing that. I don't think there's, if they all are healthy, this team makes the playoffs without even a double take. Like I wouldn't even question it.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. I think I don't want to say we're a lock for the wild card, because a lot of that has to do with the NL East is just stacked still. They always are. So they could easily take up all the spots. They kind of pretty much did last year. So I would say I do think we're pretty good when it comes to the wild card. And it's like really hard to say about the division because it's just like with Texas, there's the whole, on the offensive side, they had so many guys just having career years, and that's not sustainable at
Mm-mm.
all. So it feels like some of those guys have to come back down to earth, and it's like how much does that affect it? And
Yep.
their pitching, at least as of today, is not good. Just straight up, like
No.
their starting rotations, like okay, like we have to remember guys like Dane Dunning and like I know John Gray's hurt right now, but even when those guys are in, I mean they were tough.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
they're not gonna start the year with DeGrom. They're not gonna start the
Nope.
year with Scherzer. And as you said, if they get Montgomery back, then they have a okay rotation.
Mhm.
And that's going to be hard. But I really feel like the name of the game, as far as us against Texas, is that first half of the year. If we can
Just gonna say
go,
that.
we need to outplay them and outperform them in the W and L column up
Hmm.
until All-Star break at least. I'm feeling good if we're like fairly decent ahead of them. Um and then with Houston, like it's really hard to talk about Houston because although they haven't done a whole lot of upgrades this year, really their main upgrade's been Hater.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, that's one guy in the
Yep.
bullpen. But it's just hard because Houston just like they're still going to be good. It's just plain and
Absolutely.
simple. Especially in the offensive side, they still have Jordan, they still have Altuve, they still have Bregman, they still have Kyle Tucker, and a lot of the reason why they kind of struggled last year was due to those guys getting injured. If those guys don't get injured or don't miss playing time, they're still going to be a force regardless, and then their
Hmm.
rotation's still good. So
Yep.
I really feel like it's probably going to go back to being like us versus the Astros, and the Astros and I kind of said it earlier in the off season. I think it was before we made all these additions that like it's kind of Texas's division to lose. I'm starting to
Yeah,
think it's probably Houston's division to lose
I
now
agree.
still. And I hate saying that, but we have to be realistic here.
Yep.
So yeah, I think we're good with the wild card, but yeah, I think we have a really good potential shot at winning the division. Gosh, I can't imagine how the celebrations are going to go if we do win the division. That would be
Yeah.
gosh, huge. So I'm just hoping if we can watch Mariners playoff baseball this year, I will be happy. That's
Agreed.
really all I want. So yeah, any last words for the 2024 roster for you?
Yeah, the one thing I would say that I think this team really needs to do and that they haven't done the past few years is stop being so streaky. Obviously, the winning 16 out of your 20 games in a month, like awesome, without a doubt. But at the beginning of the year, like you just said, like last year, we sucked against Texas at the beginning of the year. Like I think they swept us almost every single time we played them before the All-Star break.
Yep.
Like that's not good. Like we are usually can handle Houston pretty well. We did well against them last year. I still think we were the only team in the 2022 playoffs that even gave them a run for their money because they just walked through everyone else. Um, but I think if we start the beginning of the year hot and can go into the All Star break, 10 games over 500, you're looking at a much better situation than being 10 games under and fighting your way back that last month to try to just get above 500. So I think the one thing that I think this team actually will do, because again, we're not just so reliant on the home run ball. Now we're finally have those average guys that just drive in runs, singles, doubles, stuff like that. I think that this team will be much more consistent than previous teams have been.
Yeah, and that's pretty much my take too. Like I said multiple times this episode, like if we can just have people not just regress to being like 60 WRC plus guys and just
Mhm.
league average is all I'm asking for. It's like I think we're a lot better off because the thing we have to remember is although we missed the playoffs last year, how much games did we lose by? One game. We were
One.
out of it by one singular game. And
Mhm.
you can't tell me that what we've done so far hasn't made up that game in additions.
I agree.
So yeah, that's where we're at with the 2024 roster. So this has been a big kind of summary of where we're at right now. Obviously, we still have a couple weeks until spring training starts, so there is a potential for more moves to happen that could be impactful. We'll see. So hopefully this doesn't, be an obsolete episode and pretty quick here. But
Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate you have coming on and talking with me. And obviously all of your links are going to be in the description. So if you guys aren't subbed or followed to East Coast M's, you definitely should do it. He makes great videos. But yeah, any last things you want to say to the audience that's watching now?
I mean, I appreciate you having me on. This was fun to talk because there's not that many Mariner fans over here, so I can't really talk to that many of them.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you having me on. Definitely check out Jake's stuff. He's definitely going to be, I'm assuming, having way bigger guests than me at some point. But yeah, just appreciate you guys listening and go M's.
Go M's. So yeah, that's going to be it for this episode of the Love to See It podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, you can subscribe. It helps the channel a lot and it's free. You can also leave a like. That's also free. It doesn't cost you any money. And if you're watching on streaming platforms, you can follow the show and leave a 5-star review. That helps out a lot. And also, once again, free 99 right there. But that's going to be it for this episode. My name is Jake, and I will see you in the next one.